Hello, welcome. So today with me I have Tatiana Mahmoud, the SVP of New Products Banjo, and Mike Mulligan, Head of Product of Zalando. Thank you for joining me. Now, how important is for a company to deliver personalized goods or services to their clients? Would you like Tatiana to start?
Sure. So, hello everyone. Hope you're having a great conference. I flew in from San Francisco yesterday morning, so forgive me if there's a little jet lag. So, the way that I think about this is always to start with, what is the job to be done that we want to deliver to our customers, right? What is it that they want to accomplish? And everything else falls from that. So, with some experiences, right, there is, a great deal of value, right, in getting them getting their job done very quickly by making sure that how they land into the experience is personalized from the get-go. I mean, the most common ones we think about are shopping, right, based on your tastes, right, based on what you've purchased in the past, right, you want to land into an environment, right, that is personalized for you, not for someone else who doesn't have your taste. Or, of course, media, like, videos, Netflix, or music. Now, in a world where there is, unlimited resources, we might want, every experience to be personalized. When you showed up today, right, at the front desk, wouldn't it be nice if they had your particular brand of coffee that you like, or I don't like sugar, I like stevia in my coffee? Wouldn't it be great if they handed that to me? But of course, in a world of limited resources, we can't do that for every experience. And so what we need to do is really understand which experiences really benefit to a great deal for a consumer landing or a customer landing in a personalized space, and which ones, let's put our efforts in other areas and in other places. So that's how I would think about it.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, from our side, fashion is as personal as you get.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a unique taste, and if we present the wrong assortment to a customer when they land, they're just going to move on. Like, I can look around the room here and I see people, and already my head is like categorizing by the types of customer they are. And that's kind of how we want to come in to our store, that we want them to see something that's right for you. Like, if I showed most of this audience what I know is trending in Berlin right now, which is kind of young, funky, very cutting edge stuff, that probably wouldn't play for most people in this audience. So if we present that to you, it's just a horrible experience. Mm-hmm. So personalization is at the core of everything you have to do in fashion. And we actually doubled down on beauty last year. We found as much as we thought fashion is personal, beauty is so curated and personal to a point that, like, you come in and you have a particular hair type or skin tone and it's just not right for you, your trust in the brand is just gone. So personal experiences and personal services are core to everything we do.
Okay, great. What is crucial for businesses to be data-led versus data-driven? Data-informed. Sorry.
So yeah, when you're thinking about personalization, when you're thinking about creating any product experience, there's a fine line, right, between developing something new to the world based on data that you already see and have measured, versus creating something new to the world, which of course by definition doesn't have any data behind it yet, right? So when we think about, data-driven or data-informed innovation, how do you bring data into the realm of innovation or creating product experiences? It's really much more, I think, on the side of being data-informed, right? What is the data that we can collect that helps us understand the larger terrain? And it's not just driving decisions based on direct data that you can see, but it's about imagining what are future opportunities that we can develop, and where is the data out in the world that helps us understand whether those opportunities will be really valuable to people. At that point, if that data information, right, if that being data informed and looking at what we called at IDEO, I worked at IDEO for many years, so inspirational experiences, right? If some inspirational experiences give you data for an idea where the data currently doesn't exist, and you have a pretty good hypothesis that you should develop something, at that point, once it's developed in alpha or beta state, then you can start collecting the data and be making more data-driven decisions. But if you always just drive decision-making based on direct data, it's very hard to invent the future. And that's actually why so many startups exist, right? Because it's not like these ideas don't exist in big companies. It's oftentimes in big companies, they over-index on direct data to make decisions, whereas you need to have some courage, right, to really imagine the future and then gather the inspirational data around it to inform your hypothesis about what you should develop next, right? And I think in personalization, being data informed in terms of qualitative and quantitative is also really important, right?
I was thinking actually that something that we launched a few years ago. We decided about 3 years ago now that we wanted to really go full on for sustainable fashion. It was a total break from what everything in the industry do, but we saw enough signals in general data from our customers that this was something they believed in. But taking that to our business, that was just a huge leap because the fashion industry as a whole was actually trending towards fast fashion. So we were like, okay, we're the leading player in Europe. We have to sort of set a direction and a tone here. It's like, where do we start? So we took a few hunches where we had no data to start with and said, okay, we need to go and find where the data is, not just look, because we were never going to find that in our own sales data, because we didn't have anything to really speak to that. So we actually set up a team and told them, go out and try things. Just experiment, find where the data is. And that team, I mean, they tried all sorts of things. They included like a valet service that would go and collect your old clothes at your door and take it back. They tried all sorts of crazy ideas just to see where the data might be found. And then after a few years of that, we started to get some data. And it told us that pre-owned fashion, as it's known now, was very much trending with young female demographics. They were very much coming through, growing up in the reused, recycled kind of world, and that's where it's our starting point. So that was our first data point. But that wasn't enough. Like, we have 49 million customers, and they're not all young teenage females. The next step was, how do we take that mainstream? How do we take that to all 49 million customers, which is the step we took about 2 years ago. And again, that was a leap of faith to some degree, because everything we talked about these segments told us this was the right way to go. Everything we talked about our values told us it was the right way to go. So we needed to find data. What is it about sustainable fashion? What is it about pre-owned fashion that speaks to 40-something males who wear suits all the time? What is it that speaks to, you know, moms buying for their families? And we had to go and, because we weren't selling it on the main store at that point, so we didn't have the data. We could just pull it out and say, here's what speaks.
Right.
So we had to go find data sets that informed our decisions, but then reinforce that. As soon as we started the process of bringing that into the fashion store, and I look back on the landing page for our pre-owned section now, and it's kind of good a measure of pride, because I stepped back and I could see that they just kept iterating and said, okay, the data's leading in this way. You go onto our landing page for pre-owned now, and right through you can see, and if you kind of know where the sausage is made, you can think, that's for that group of people, that's for that group of people, and we're hitting all the new data segments and finding new ones all the time. But there was a combination of, yes, we were data-led, but there was a certain sense of we knew the data would only take us so far, and we had to make certain leaps of faith.
That's an incredible, example. And like, how did that happen? Was that a top-down decision? Was it bottoms up? Because even making that courageous leap, right? When again, you're right, like the rest of the industry was going into fast fashion and disposable fashion, and how did that leap happen? Because that's so hard usually.
It's hard to know the origin of that, because within the employee base, there is a strong feeling that we're big enough that we can make those changes. There's a little bit of arrogance perhaps, but there's also a feeling the employee base in Zalando is quite young. So they're coming up, and they're coming up in a world of seeing climate change and getting it. But at the same time, we have founders who are still quite young, and they have children now. So they're coming from, I want to leave this world a better place for my kids. I own a company that, is leading fashion. It's our job to make a stand here. And the time is right, so that helped. But at the same time, I think I would put a lot down to the founders ultimately, because they championed it. When I said we set up a team, like for 2 years, they just plugged away, trying different ideas to see where the data was, where the market was for this, and can we create a market?
Okay. How easy is for large companies to interpret their numbers in order to launch a new product? Tatiana?
I mean, maybe we could start with you this time, Mike, because, like, basically, we were just talking on interpreting numbers, and, when you're a big company, what does it take to, like, look at all these dashboards?
The first thing is to have a feel for the data.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was a person in my team, and she was so talented with data. But a few years ago, I took her aside and sort of said, "You quote me numbers, but what do they mean?" So there is a data science with data. It's called data science, and it's for a good reason. But there is a craft of it as well. Like, we had an experiment we ran last year. All the engagement data was great. Everything was looking good, but it just didn't feel right. And if you were to ask me to explain why that is, it didn't feel right. So we just did a deep dive on the data and we said, okay, that was working and it was doing everything we said it to do. But we noticed what it was doing, it was actually not net positive for the company. It was actually just taking data from another product totally at a different place. So we had to sort of make a decision. The data, if you just looked at it, was telling you one story. But it didn't feel right if you dig in underneath that data. And one of the first things we tend to do when we see data is first of all, the average.
Okay.
You sort of say, okay, what's it doing in this market? Or what's it doing in this segment? And if there's an outlier there, you start thinking, is that just because there's something strange about the market? Or is it something we should know about that could happen in other markets?
Mm-hmm.
So don't take data at face value
Mm-hmm.
and the average. They're two things we do a lot.
Yeah, and I would just follow up, that reminds me of a story from Nextdoor, when I was the chief product officer at Nextdoor. Do you guys know what Nextdoor is? Anybody here use Nextdoor? Nextdoor, it's basically an app for neighbors to connect to other neighbors. Very popular in the United States. It's also in many parts of Western Europe, UK, other areas. And it's basically social media. And one of the things that we found was if you were just looking at the daily dashboards every day, as the chief product officer, that's what I started my day with, was looking at all the daily dashboards. What you would notice is, as you said, the engagement numbers, would go up when a lot of times negative things were happening in the community, right? So for anybody who has been on social media, right, what gets the largest number of clicks and comments, right? Is it happy fun post, or is it very volatile posts, right?
Bad news, I would say.
What?
Bad news, I would say.
Bad news, right? that gets the most clicks. And so we worked with the data science team, and we actually created a neighborhood vitality product team to really explore what does this mean, and what are the real dynamics, not just in the short term around that type of clickbaity content, right? And that drives up engagement. But what is the long-term impact of that type of content? And what we actually discovered was that, one of the things that's interesting about Nextdoor is that Nextdoor is broken up into neighborhoods. So they're little micro social networks, essentially, on Nextdoor. And what we discovered is that when there were more negative posts in a neighborhood, the engagement would go up for a short period of time. But after 6 months, if you did a retention analysis after 6 months, the engagement in those neighborhoods would start to drop.
Okay.
Whereas you would have sustained engagement in the neighborhoods where there were more positive posts. And so it's really important, as Mike said, I think, to look at not just the data, but to really understand what are the human dynamics that help you interpret why does the data look how it does. And if you start to have questions about, like, is it really true that negative posts and all of this negative, content is the thing that's going to drive a long-term healthy business? Is that really true? If you start to ask yourself those questions, you can then formulate different experiments and different ways of collecting data to get you to the answer that maybe isn't initially seen in the first dashboard. Because remember, every data collection is partial. You're never going to get all the data that helps you see the full picture, right? Any dashboard you're looking at is a small slice of what's happening in your product, and that small slice may tell you something very important, but it may also only, and usually I would say, it only directs you to the next questions that you need to ask, right? So what is that dashboard? What are the questions coming out of that dashboard? Not just what are the answers coming out of that dashboard. is what really great product leaders look at. When they look at a dashboard, they say not just what is this telling me, but what are the next questions that I should be positing based on what I'm seeing. Because remember, behind all those numbers are actually humans. And humans are messy, and they're filled with emotion, and they do things for very different reasons, and that's what you need to get into, is like, why are the numbers looking like they are? And why are the humans doing these things, right? And what is driving the behaviors? And how do I interpret when these numbers go up versus when these numbers go down? What are the humans actually doing that causes these numbers to fluctuate the way that they do, right?